Hey there, my name is Soundrak and welcome back to my Terraria 1.4 Journey's End Beginner's Guide series. This episode is all about the newest boss added to Terraria, or rather imported into Terraria from that other game I've done lots of guides on, Deerclops from the Don't Starve franchise. I already covered all the loot drops in my crossover video, but in this guide I will go over summoning Deerclops, fight mechanics, and strategies for all difficulties. As always, timestamps are down in the description, and let me know down in the comments what your favorite loot item is from the boss. Now let's get to it. Deerclops is the first boss that most players end up facing in the Don't Starve games, but here in Terraria it's more of a late pre-hard mode challenge, and certainly after the boss of your evil biome. As with most bosses in the game, there are two ways to summon it. A natural spawn can occur if you are in the snow biome at midnight during a blizzard if you have at least 9 defense and 200 health. The boss can also be summoned by using a deer thing item at any time of day in the snow biome. This summoning item is crafted at a demon or crimson altar using 3 flinx fur, a lens, and 5 crimtane or demonite ore. The boss itself has several somewhat unusual characteristics. For starters, the legs of the boss do not have a hitbox, which means you can run through it at ground level and not get slapped for feeling up its legs. Okay, that sounded inappropriate. Attacks on the legs, however, will do damage, and using your Shield of Cthulhu to charge into the legs will also connect, so if you're trying to run under the boss, don't use the shield charge from close range. The top end of the body's hitbox is also a bit smaller than the boss's appearance, and so long as you are at least 10 blocks above the boss, you won't take any damage when running past. Unlike pretty much every boss in the game, should you die during the fight, Deerclops will not despawn, but instead will be there waiting for you somewhere in the middle of the snow biome. And good news, the boss's health will not regenerate while you're away. The bad news though is that your pylons will be unusable until the boss is defeated, so enjoy the walk of shame back to the snow. If left alone for too long, the boss will despawn, and it will also despawn if you leave the game and come back later. Deerclops does not have any sort of an Enrage mechanic and can be safely lured out of the snow biome without any adverse consequences. However, unlike most bosses where keeping your distance is often a good idea, if you're too far away from Deerclops, it will enter shadow form and be completely invulnerable to all types of damage. So sorry to all you ranged damage dealers, this is a boss that you'll have to stay close to while fighting. As for attacks, there are several tools in Deerclops' kit to make your life difficult. If you're on the ground level or less than 15 blocks above the boss, it will raise its arms, scream at you, and then hit the ground, causing ice spikes to form. This attack will always follow a 3-attack pattern, where the first 2 attacks will shoot spikes out to one side, and the third attack will form spikes on both sides of the boss, but with less distance than the one-sided attacks. The sideways attacks can easily be avoided by running through the boss's legs or over the top, but for the third attack you'll need to get out of range to avoid it. On classic difficulty, the damage of the ice attack is low enough that with good defense, the damage is pretty negligible. But on expert and master mode, it hits quite a bit harder and will also freeze you in place for about a second, meaning you'll want to avoid getting hit by the ice on these higher difficulties. If you're at least 15 tiles above the boss or too far to the side, Deerclops has 2 attacks that can still get to you. If you are directly above it, Deerclops will summon 5 shadow hands around you that can each have one of 3 different movement patterns. Pattern 1 hands will travel fast over a long distance with a slightly curved movement and then vanish, while pattern 2 hands slowly move a very short distance, stop, and then spin around in a circle before vanishing. The third pattern is my least favorite, as these ones will slowly move a short distance and then stick around a little while before disappearing, often getting in the way of your movement pattern if you're trying to dodge other attacks. These hands do less damage than the ice attack, but due to their random positions and movement patterns can be hard to avoid. On classic difficulty they can be tanked, but on expert and master mode they'll start to dish out quite a bit of damage if you try staying directly above the boss. Deerclops' second aerial attack happens if you're out of range of the ice attack, either because you're too far above or off to the side. For this attack, Deerclops will dig its hands into the ground and then throw a bunch of debris up into the air. This is the boss's strongest attack, so even on classic difficulty, getting hit by this debris regularly will start to deplete your health unless you're decked out with top-end pre-hard mode gear. Because trajectory of the debris is pretty chaotic, the best way to avoid getting hit is to quickly go above the chunks or off to the other side as the attack begins. Now, there is actually a method to prevent the boss from using this attack entirely, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Now, you may have gotten the idea by now that speed is your friend in this fight, but well aware of this fact, Deerclops will periodically roar to apply a slow debuff that will significantly decrease your horizontal movement speed. This debuff lasts for 12 seconds on Classic, 24 seconds on Expert, and 30 seconds on Master Mode. And although there are items that can protect you from the slow debuff, they are only available in Hard Mode. In my experience though, the boss doesn't tend to use this attack so long as you stay relatively close by. But get too far away and you'll get slowed down, making it so that dodging the damaging attacks will be much more difficult. And finally, if you are on Expert or Master Mode throughout the fight, Deerclops will periodically summon single shadow hands that, like the 5-hand attack, will either move towards you fast while curving, slow and then lingering, or will stay relatively still and then spin around in a circle. The rate of these hands appearing will increase as the boss's health goes down, and their chaotic nature can make it much more difficult to avoid both the hands and the boss's regular attacks. If you are in range of the ice attacks, these hands will just spawn on their own, but if you're out of range of the ice spike attacks, Deerclops will roar to spawn the single shadow hands. Now that we've covered the boss's attacks, let's talk about strategies to down the Deerclops. On classic difficulty, the boss is pretty easy. If you have at least, say, 30 or so defense and good health regen, you can just tank the boss. One method is to put your back to a wall, stand in some honey, and use whatever weapon you like to chip away at its health. Be sure to have a heart lantern, campfire, and food buffs for best results, and of course iron skin and regeneration potions. And for all strategies, you may want to use a warmth potion crafted with a frost minnow caught anywhere in the snow biome and a shiverthorn, as it will decrease the damage from the ice, spike, and debris attacks by a massive 30%. Deerclops only has 10 defense on all difficulties, so you can literally use just about any weapon you like so long as you're able to hit the boss from somewhat close range. If you prefer a more active battle, you can use a couple of speed boosters, including any combination of swiftness potions, Hermes boots and its upgrades, and a Magiluminescence to run back and forth through the boss's legs to avoid its ice spike attacks. Just remember to go a bit further off to the side every third attack to avoid the version that hits both sides. And again, pretty much any weapon from any class will work, the higher the DPS the better. And so long as you don't get too far away from the boss, you shouldn't have to worry about the slow debuff. On Expert and Master Mode, things get a little bit harder due to the single shadow hands that spawn throughout the fight. My preferred method is to have a row of platform that is between 10 to 14 blocks above the ground, and then go back and forth above the boss to dodge the ice spike attacks. By being elevated, you can use your Shield of Cthulhu charge and not hit the boss, allowing you to quickly move a good distance to the other side. You'll still have to dodge the single shadow hands and keep track of the ice attack patterns, but overall this is a pretty straightforward method for the fight. Just be sure to adjust your movement pattern if a slow moving hand lingers in the area that you would otherwise need to go to dodge the ice spikes. I find that for whatever reason, moving further to the side, back and forth, tends to result in less shadow hand interference, though they will still get in the way at times. Melee characters using this method will likely want to use a yo-yo to deal consistent damage, while all other classes, like on the lower difficulties, can really use whatever weapon you like. Probably the most effective pre-hard mode setup is the Summoner's Obsidian Armor set, along with the Jungle's Snapthorn Whip and Feral Claws, toggling to a Spinal Tap from the dungeon for increased damage output. But other than that, just use the best armor and weapons you have, and so long as you're good at moving back and forth while dodging the shadow hands, you should be able to beat the boss. That said, I would recommend waiting until after you've downed the boss of your evil biome first, in order to have good baseline defense and damage output options available. Now, if you really want to make the fight easy on Expert or Master Mode, remember earlier when I said there was a way to prevent the boss from throwing debris at you? To take this attack out of the equation entirely, all you need to do is get Deerclops on a layer of platform that is at least 15 tiles above the ground, and this will prevent the boss from grabbing anything to throw at you. Deerclops will still try to do the attack, but nothing will happen. This actually works on all difficulties, and so long as you cross over the top of the boss quickly, you won't have to worry about either the debris attack or the 5 Shadow Hand attack. On Expert or Master mode, you will still need to dodge the single Shadow Hands, but all things considered, this is probably the easiest method to down the Deerclops, even if it is a little bit cheesy. And that's it for Deerclops. For a full rundown on the boss's loot, be sure to check out my video that covers all the stuff they added into Terraria in the crossover update. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers!